Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I know I've been really awful about posting lately, but I'm still in midst of moving and I'm getting accustomed to working full-time for the first time in my life. I couldn't bring myself to filming lately, but nevertheless, tonight's the night and I decided to do a really in-depth tutorial, especially for beginners, on how to apply a base, how to apply blush, bronzer, highlighter, a setting spray. I'm going to be recommending some products to you, and most importantly, I'm going to show you how to use them. All the products I'm using today, I will be putting at the end of the video, so you can take a screenshot on your phone if you want to. And that's it. Let's jump right into it. So, you want to start out with really squeaky clean skin. If you want me to show you how I usually prep my skin for makeup, just leave a comment down below. But I'm just gonna go ahead and use a moisturizer. You can basically use any moisturizer you prefer. If it's daytime, you can follow this with an SPF. But as it's already 9 p.m, I'm just gonna leave it at that. So the first thing you want to do is to even out your skin tone. Perhaps you're really lucky and you will only need to use a concealer. If you want to have a little bit more coverage, you have two options. Either you use a foundation. I haven't washed this in a while, but nevertheless, this is a foundation, and this is a tinted moisturizer. Whereas a foundation will give you more coverage. It's a little bit more tricky in application, and it will also feel like you're wearing makeup throughout the day. Whereas a tinted moisturizer is a lot easier in application. You can just use your fingers. It feels a lot lighter, but it won't give you as much coverage as a foundation because it's actually created by combining a foundation and a moisturizer. This is perfect if you have really good skin and you just want to even out your skin tone the tiniest bit and you want a hassle-free application in the morning. This will require a little bit more work, but it will give you a more even and long-lasting finish. So it's completely up to you. I assume that most of you will want to start up with a tinted moisturizer. I'm just going to show you how I would apply this. So you're just going to take tiniest bit and then you apply it with your fingers. And I'm already concentrating it where I need more coverage. So my forehead is usually pretty clear, so I'm focusing it on the lower half of my face and I'm blending this into my neck. And you can see, obviously I haven't used any concealer yet, but my overall skin tone appears a lot smoother and a lot more even. I always like to use a concealer afterwards. You want to look for something that is slightly lighter than your skin tone, but not too light, because otherwise you will just enhance your imperfections by putting a spotlight on them practically. I like to put a dot into my inner corners and one just at the outside, and then I cover up all my little imperfections, and you can just blend this in with your fingers. And once I've blended this in with my fingers, I'm just gonna go over everything with a sponge. If I would have applied my tinted moisturizer with the sponge right away, the sponge would have absorbed too much product in my opinion. So I always use the sponge afterwards. The next step will be powder, and a lot of people think that powders are meant to use to add more coverage. There are these kinds of powders on the market, but they're supposed to be used instead of a foundation or a concealer. So if you have already applied some coverage on your skin, be it with a concealer or with a tinted moisturizer or a foundation, you don't need to add any additional coverage with another layer of powder, because that would only make the skin look more cakey. So what I like to use is a translucent powder. I'm going to put all the products I use at the end of the video. A tapered brush. Put this into my translucent powder, which has basically no color. And I'm just going to apply this where I will usually crease, which is on my under eyes, around my mouth, and basically everywhere I put concealer, around my nose. But basically, that's it. You want your skin to still look fresh and natural, and by powdering down your entire face, you would take away all of the skin's natural glow. So just focus the powder wherever you want to you maybe want to control oil production, or maybe you want to set a concealer, but don't overdo it. So some people powder down their T-zone. For me, it's especially around here where I get really oily. And that's it. A good translucent powder is invisible, so you won't see it. but it will help you to set the cream products you have used, and it will keep your face from looking too shiny. The next step is a bronzer. I tend to recommend a bronzer to basically anyone. Why do I think that bronzer suits anyone? First of all, if you have a look at my face now, after I have used concealer or a tinted moisturizer, my skin loses a lot of its dimension, and you will want to bring back that kind of dimension by using a bronzer. I really like to use a matte bronzer, not only because it looks more natural, but also it will help you to create a little bit of shadow and sort of like a faux contour without having to actually contour your face. So this is a lighter bronzer because I'm really pale around the winter months, and you will want to use a brush that will allow you to be precise with it. Then you dip it into your bronzer. This is a powder bronzer. And okay, that's a lot. And then I always like to start just below the cheekbones and work my way into my temple. And then blend this down the neck. And you can do the same thing on the other side. Especially in the winter months, I like to be a little bit more heavy with bronzer. I like to use whatever's on my brush and blend this along the sides of my nose, and blend whatever's left on my brush on my eyelids and on my chin. This will give the skin a really unified and natural look. And as you can see, bronzer really helps to give the skin a little bit more dimension. There are cream bronzers as well, but I feel like, especially if you're starting out with makeup, a powder bronzer is a lot easier to work with. It's very forgiving as a product. You can always just, if you use a little bit too much, you can always just blend it out. So I would really recommend you to buy a powder bronzer. Afterwards, I always like to use a blush. In terms of color, you want to find a blush that suits your complexion, and usually your perfect blush shade is the color that you would naturally flush. Think of your cheeks when they're sunburned or when you heard something really embarrassing. That is the kind of color that's your perfect natural blush shade, and that is the shade you want to be looking for. I always find that the soft peachy shade will suit almost every complexion. So if you're unsure, just go with peachy blush shade and it will probably suit you. With blush, I like to use a brush that's a little bit more fluffy, but you can actually use the same brush that you bronzed your skin with. I like to blend in my blush from the outside of my face because it will look more natural, because otherwise you have more color in the center of your face, which is something that makes your face appear a lot rounder, which I like to avoid. And then I blend it out really well. Sometimes I put a tiny bit on my nose and in my crease. So the penultimate step is to use a highlighter. I don't typically use highlighter every single day, but it does give the skin a really nice glow. So again, you can choose between a liquid highlighter or a powder highlighter. Just for educational reasons, I will show you both. This is a liquid highlighter. I always like to put a pea-sized amount on my hands, and then I start to work it in with my fingers. So I start with my Cupid's bow, then I add just the tiniest bit on the top of my cheekbones. Liquid blush is a lot more forgiving, and I like to apply a little bit of highlighter under my brows, just to give them the optical illusion of a tiny lift, and then just the tiniest bit on the tip of my nose. If you feel like you went in too heavy, you can just take your sponge and blend over your highlighter. And now I'm going to show you how I would use a powder highlighter. Obviously you don't have to use both, you just have to fetch my highlighter. So I like to apply a powder highlighter with a really small brush, just to be able to, because if you go overboard with powder highlighter, which is usually a lot more metallic, you will look like a crazy person. So I'm just going to take my powder highlighter, work the highlighter into my brush, blend off the excess on the back of my hand. I'm applying a powder highlighter exactly where I would apply liquid highlighter. The only difference is you will have to use a brush. My favorite spot to apply a highlighter is in the inner corner of my eyes, because I feel it will create a really awake kind of eye look, because it reflects light directly next, because it attracts light into your eyes. My final step is always a setting spray, and there are mattifying setting sprays and there are setting sprays that will give you a little bit more glow. A setting spray will not only help your makeup to last throughout the entire day, but it will also make your face look less powdery. So especially if you use a powder bronzer or a powder blush, it will literally melt in all the powder products into your skin. I feel like a setting spray is an everyday necessity. So you just need to shake the product really well, and then you spray it on top of your face, and then you let it dry. And that's basically it. That is my makeup routine for beginners. I really hope you could take something from today. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please give this video a thumbs up, and I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe to my channel, because it will help me to create more videos like this. And I will see you guys next week.